You know, I would never get over the time the Pittsburgh Steelers passed on the opportunity to draft Lamar Jackson in the 2018 NFL draft. I remember it like it was yesterday. The Steelers were on the clock, 28th overall, and the whole entire process leading up to the draft, I was telling everybody that Lamar Jackson was going to be the best quarterback from the 2018 draft class when it was all said and done. Over Baker, Josh Allen. I felt Lamar Jackson was truly going to be one of one. And instead, when the Steelers had the opportunity to draft him, they took a box safety and Terrell Edmunds over him. And I was so pissed off when they did that. I will never forget the look that I have on my face. I was calling up my homeboy saying, oh crap, we might get Lamar Jackson. He's really on the board. We finally are going to get our guy to succeed, Big Ben. People, it's about to happen. I was so excited. On my Facebook profile page, I had a Photoshop of Lamar Jackson, the Pittsburgh Steelers jersey, and I was one of the biggest defenders of Lamar Jackson. Coming out of that draft class, I knew that he was going to be something special. And when he was still on the board, I was pleasantly surprised because I definitely thought that he wasn't going to last that long. So when the Steelers ended up taking Terrell Edmunds 28th overall, my heart shattered in pieces. But you know what added salt to the wound? When the Ravens traded up Ozzie Newsome, this was his last ever draft. He's going to be a Hall of Fame executive. They traded back for the last pick, and I already knew what time it was. And when they drafted Lamar Jackson, and I saw Lamar Jackson walk up on that stage angry, holding up that Baltimore Ravens first-round pick jersey, oh my goodness, that broke my spirit. Not only did my favorite team pass up on Lamar, but they allowed him to go to our arch rival. And what made me even more mad and upset is when he was interviewing, or when he was getting interviewed by Deion Sanders, and Deion Sanders was asking how he feels about all the teams that passed up on him, and Lamar Jackson said, oh, that don't matter now. I'm a Raven, and they're going to get a Super Bowl out of me. And just hearing him say that just made me so upset as a Steelers fan. And every time I see the Pittsburgh Steelers play the Baltimore Ravens with Lamar Jackson on the field, I just get so salty. And I don't care if the Steelers have a winning record against Lamar Jackson. The point is, if the Steelers would have drafted Lamar Jackson, they would be in a way better situation than what they are right now. They possibly would have already have won another Super Bowl. And we seem to forget that Lamar Jackson saved John Harbaugh's job. Because when he ended up having to replace Joe Flacco, the Ravens season was starting to go left, and the hot seat was starting to cook for John Harbaugh, because ever since they won their last Super Bowl against the San Francisco 49ers, it was the Harbaugh Bowl. They didn't really have too much postseason success after that, and they had a couple of disappointing seasons following Lamar Jackson's arrival, and there was really a lot of noise around John Harbaugh potentially getting fired. But Lamar Jackson came in there. He ended up turning their season around. He ended up leading them to the playoffs, and then we had that ugly playoff performance that he had against the Chargers in the wild card round when the Ravens fan base turned on him. He was getting booed, but ultimately, the season after that, he ends up winning his MVP. Then he ends up winning his second MVP award a few seasons after that. And Lamar Jackson has been nothing but one of the all-time talents at the quarterback position for this era. Meanwhile, you have the Steelers, who ever since Big Ben retired, they still are struggling to find his successor. They still don't have one. Russell Wilson isn't a long-term solution. Even if he does play well, he's not going to be able to sustain that level of play 2-3 years down the road. And we don't know what Justin Fields is. That's why the Bears traded him away and replaced him for Caleb Williams. The Pittsburgh Steelers, if they would have took Lamar Jackson in the first round of 2018, you could have let him sat behind Big Ben for a while. Because remember, in 2019, Big Ben missed the majority of that season due to an elbow injury. And the only reason he came back in 2020 was because the Steelers kind of begged him, because they still didn't have any solutions long-term at quarterback. And 2020 started out really good. They started out undefeated, and then eventually everything just went downhill when defenses figured out how to stop the Steelers' offense because Big Ben didn't have enough arm strength to throw the ball more than 20, 30 yards down the field. And that's when the Steelers eventually went to the postseason. They got down big early against the Cleveland Browns due to Big Ben's turnover problems. If you would have had Lamar Jackson, Big Ben probably would have retired, and Lamar would have been good enough to lead the Steelers to a possible conference championship appearance and maybe a Super Bowl. And this is why I will never get over the fact that Pittsburgh drafted Terrell Edmunds over Lamar. Terrell Edmunds was decent for Pittsburgh. He wasn't garbage, but he wasn't what you expect out of a first-round safety. And very few safeties are worth a first-round pick. That's why you don't see too many of them getting drafted that high. So when you get a guy like Terrell Edmunds, who right now currently is a journeyman backup, and you see the Baltimore Ravens having an elite high-end quarterback, it just makes you wonder, what if Pittsburgh would have took Lamar Jackson like they should have? Because he obviously would have been a way better pick than Terrell Edmunds, and you can't say otherwise. You can say, oh, JT, it's no guarantee that he would have been a sure thing. The Steelers are a really good organization. They're one of the best organizations in all the sports. Mike Tomlin and that coaching staff would have had Lamar Jackson getting right, and I think he would have reached the same level that he is right now on the Baltimore Ravens if he would have got taken in the first round by Pittsburgh with the 28th pick. The Steelers passed up on the opportunity to get a franchise-changing quarterback. And it further shows how Mike Tomlin and his franchise, they kind of are Stevie Wonder when it comes to evaluating the quarterback position. They just don't have an eye for finding a franchise-changing QB. That's the thing that has held Mike Tomlin back from postseason success. Meanwhile, when you get the quarterback right, like the Ravens do, a guy like John Harbaugh, you end up having more stability when it comes to him because his job was on the line. When you get QB right, your job security doesn't become a question, and you become a winning football team because outside of Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson has the second best win-loss record in the National Football League. And I just get really irritated when I see flashbacks of the 2018 draft in my dreams, and I get all happy. I remember I was amped up. I was calling my homeboys. I'm like, bro, we about to get Lamar. We about to get Lamar. Oh, my God. You guys are in trouble. We are about to get Lamar, Action Jackson, in Pittsburgh, people. And then they broke my spirit taking Terrell Edmunds, dog. I damn near broke my TV doing that. I could not believe we took Terrell Edmunds over Lamar Jackson. That will be a draft moment that I would never forget. And when I get 60 years old and I'm telling my grandkids the story about how the Steelers could have had Lamar Jackson, they're going to be asking me, JT, who did you guys draft over him? And at that point, I'm probably not even going to remember Terrell Edmunds' name anymore because I think he's with the Jaguars right now fighting for a roster spot. That was one of the worst draft decisions that the Steelers have ever made. And they've drafted really well in the first round over the last decade. But they've had their fair share of misses, such as Jarvis Jones, the edge rusher they drafted in the first round a few years ago out of Georgia. He didn't pan out. Artie Burns, who was getting burned by any wide receiver he was lining up against. If you would have drafted Lamar Jackson, this franchise would have been in a prime position to win a Super Bowl. I'll never get over it. Never.